Russian forces now also control Europe's largest nuclear plant after shelling the facility, which is located in southern Ukraine. A building adjacent to a nuclear reactor caught fire. It since has been extinguished. The plant had been inaccessible because firefighters were being shot at. No essential equipment was damaged, and the UN says no radioactive material was released. The U.S. Embassy in Kyiv tweeted just moments ago, quote, "It is a war crime to attack a nuclear power plant." Joining us now, Pentagon Press Secretary, retired Rear Admiral John Kirby. Admiral Kirby, thanks so much for being with us this morning. Let's start right there with the attack on the nuclear power plant. Do you have an assessment of the damage there? Is there any leaking radioactive material? And what do you say to Russia for going after Europe's largest nuclear power plant or any power plant?
We're working closely with the Department of Energy, Willie, to assess the damage. We would agree with assessments so far this morning that there's no leakage, there's no radioactive leakage right now, and that the fire's out and the damage seems to have been fairly limited. But to your other question, this speaks to the recklessness and the dangerous atmosphere inside Ukraine caused by this unprovoked war of aggression, this unprovoked invasion by Russia, and the fact that regardless of how it started, that the Russians have not been very discriminate in the way they're going about this military campaign. And they aren't known for accuracy and for precision. And certainly this is an example of just how dangerous this can get, not just for the people of Ukraine, but for the European continent.
So, Admiral Kirby, there have been increased calls just in the last couple of days as we've watched Russia now continue its slow push, now accelerating across Ukraine, for the United States to do more. Can you speak to what's happening right now? And is there a possibility that there could be stepped up military intervention from the United States as this seems to get worse by the day?
Sure. Let me tell you what we are doing now, because it's a great question, Willie. We are expediting the shipment of additional security assistance to the Ukrainian armed forces. In just the last few days, more and more ammunition, more and more weapon systems we have helped flow into that country. We're also helping coordinate the flow of shipments from other countries as well. This is a real international effort, and we know that that material is getting into the right hands. Secretary Austin spoke to his Ukrainian counterpart just a couple of days ago, and Minister Reznikov made it clear not only that they appreciate this material, but that it is being used, it is getting into the hands of Ukrainian armed forces and fighters there. So we know that's happening, and we're going to continue to look for ways to accelerate that aid and assistance. The other thing we're doing is making sure that we can bolster the NATO alliance. We're flowing additional forces to NATO's eastern flank, both in the north and in the south, and we're going to look for ways to continue to do that as needed. We're going to make it very clear to Mr. Putin that we will defend every inch of NATO territory. The other thing that we've done in just the last couple of days, Willie, is stand up a deconfliction channel. It's headquartered there in Germany at the European Command headquarters. But we now have a direct way of communicating with the Russian Ministry of Defense on a daily basis in case there's a need to deconflict things like airspace.
So Admiral, thanks so much for being with us. I wanted to ask you, you say every inch of soil. I had a former administration official tell me that with the United States seeming to be cowed by every nuclear threat that Putin makes, that right now it's Ukraine, but what are we going to do when Putin says he's going into Estonia next, or he's going into Latvia, or he's going into Lithuania? I have reporters on the ground saying that people in those countries are frightened. They think that we might stand up for Poland, but we won't stand up for them. Will you make a clear and unequivocal statement here today that based on the policy, the Pentagon policy, the White House policy, the administration policy, that an attack on Estonia is an attack on NATO and will be met with the full force of NATO's military might?
We take our commitment to Article 5 very seriously. An attack on one NATO nation is an attack on all. And that is why we have continued to flow additional resources and capabilities to NATO's eastern flank to be able to do that if needed. Now, hopefully it won't come to that, Joe. But if a NATO country is attacked, the United States will absolutely come to the defense of it. You know, Joe, that the first and only time that Article 5 was invoked was in our defense on 9/11, where NATO came to our defense. We remember that here at the Pentagon. Pentagon, and we're absolutely committed to that going forward. Again, hopefully it won't come to that, and one of the reasons why we stood up this deconfliction channel is to make sure we have a direct line to the Russian Ministry of Defense so that they know and they can see very clearly and plainly how seriously we take that commitment.
So, Admiral, a similar question that I asked to Admiral Stavridis, but you talk about the resources that are coming in, extra supplies, aid, money, weapons. Will there ever be enough in the hands of Ukrainians to make them capable of stabilizing their country, or are we just watching Ukraine's demise in slow motion?
We're going to continue to flow as much security assistance to Ukraine as we can, as fast as we can. And I would note, and I think Admiral Stavridis talked about this as well, the Ukrainians are fighting back. They are defending their country, and they're doing it quite effectively. The Russian advance up in the north continues to be stalled and frustrated by Ukrainian resistance, which has been extraordinarily effective. Now, look, we all have to be clear-eyed about this. The Russians have the numbers advantage. They have more capability available to them. They built it up over the last several months, more than 150,000 troops, more than 120 battalion tactical groups. They have a lot of advantages right now. So we're going to do whatever we can to continue to make sure that Ukraine can defend itself.
Do we expect more troop movements, just as a show of force, following up on the last question?
Sure.
Poland, Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia. Are we expecting to send more forces in there just as a show of support?
Well, President Biden has already ordered more than 10,000 troops just from the United States to go to Europe to bolster that eastern flank. We certainly wouldn't take off the table that there could be additional deployments of U.S. troops from the United States to NATO territory. The other thing we're doing, Joe, is moving stuff around. So we've taken troops out of Germany and we moved them down to Romania. We've moved some of them up to the Baltics. Aircraft. There are dozens now of NATO aircraft doing policing missions over NATO airspace, and that includes additional strike fighter aircraft from the United States, some from the Navy, some from the Air Force, F-35s. We're very much in the air over the airspace, and we're going to continue to talk to our allies about additional capabilities they might need. I want to stress that this is very much about NATO. It's about the West. It's about this alliance. It's not just about the United States.
Hey, Admiral, good morning. It's Jonathan Lemire. You mentioned the stalled Russian movements up north, and if you had an update on that convoy, please provide it. But Russia has made some advances in the south, some of the port cities. Give us the latest as to what's going on there. How concerning is that?
They have made more geographic progress in the south, certainly coming out of Crimea. They seem to have sort of forked off coming out of Crimea, one to the northeast towards Mariupol. And as I think you just, in the segment before me, you talked about how the mayor of Mariupol says they're being shelled. That we think that the Russians are coming at Mariupol from two directions, from the southeast direction along that coast of the Sea of Azov, but also coming down north out of Donetsk. They want to surround and encircle Mariupol. We know that that is a population center that they want, and they are attacking it now. They have also moved to the northwest out of Crimea towards that town of Kherson. We can't dispute any of the accounts coming out of there that the Russians actually hold Kherson. That certainly seems to be the indication. And now we think they're going to move northwest out of Kherson to try to encircle Odessa. They've got ships in the Black Sea. We haven't seen any maritime moves on Odessa, but it certainly seems to be what they are considering doing. It would make sense that if they did that, they would also try to come up on a ground perspective, coming down from the north, and that appears to be what they're trying to do, or why they went through Kherson. So they've had more progress in the south, but in the north they continue to be frustrated. They're not making as much progress on major population centers. Certainly not Kyiv, not Kharkiv, not a town called Cherniv, which they're trying to surround and encircle and bombard. That convoy that we talked about also has been stalled and slowed, and quite frankly, a big reason for that has been the Ukrainian resistance. They were able to hit some of those lead vehicles and get it to stop.
Pentagon Press Secretary, retired Rear Admiral John Kirby, thank you. You do a great job explaining this difficult situation. We appreciate it.
Hey, thanks so much for watching our YouTube channel. You can follow up on today's top stories and breaking news, or catch up on your favorite MSNBC shows all in one place. Download the NBC News app today.